I'm Anna from iov42, and we've created bespoke traceability technology called Interu to try and help organizations all around the world who have to prove that their products are sourced and produced legally and sustainably. When we think about climate action and net zero, there are loads of hot topics in the news that we come across every single day. We hear about ocean technology, about transport, about the energy sector, about infrastructure. But there's an industry that we know very well that's been around far longer than most of those, that is having a significant impact on emissions and on our abilities to meet net zero targets, and that is deforestation. So how many of you know that deforestation accounts for around a fifth of all global greenhouse gas emissions? Where does that deforestation come from? What's driving it that causes this huge proportion of emissions? Well, it's largely from demand for agricultural products such as timber, wood, palm oil, coffee, cocoa, leather, soy, rubber, and so on. So the shoes, belts that we wear, the paper notebooks that we might write our to-do lists on every day, the afternoon coffee that we have as a little pick-me-up. These are all really contributing. And when I tell you some shocking facts, such as there is some tropical forests these days that now emit more carbon than they manage to capture, well, hopefully we can agree that something is going really, really wrong. So if we acknowledge that this is a problem, what is being done about it? Well, good news, kind of. There is growing evidence of bottom-up consumer activism and consumer demand, but perhaps more markedly is top-down pressure. And the biggest steps appear to be taken by regulators and policymakers, particularly in the EU in Brussels, with their EU Deforestation Act, the EUDR, that organisations will have to comply with by the end of this year. The aim of the EU deforestation regulation is to decouple European consumption of goods from deforestation. The regulation seeks to do this by making importers, processors, exporters and retailers in the EU prove that no products or raw materials in their products have contributed to global deforestation or land degradation. Now, to do this at scale across entire global value chains is incredibly challenging for organizations because of what is being asked of them. So, as a European operator, and by extension, my suppliers around the world, I have to prove that due diligence has been conducted on every single possible input back to source. So that's back to the forest stump or the part of the farm where the goods came from. The cost of not doing this, not being able to prove that I've done my due diligence, is huge, both in terms of company reputation, but also in terms of potential financial fines. So an organization size of IKEA, for instance, a big global retailer and manufacturer, they face fines of up to 1.8 billion euros if they're caught with deforestation within their supply chains. And I've chosen IKEA because they're a company that's really making big efforts not to fall foul of this regulation. To do that, whether you're a big organization or a small one, is very, very difficult. So imagine you're a paper company and you produce notebooks. A notebook can have as many as 300,000 different forest plots as sources or as input to that notebook. You've got to gather that data, you've got to analyze it, you've got to risk assess it, you've got to share that data with the regulator, with your customers. And that's incredibly complicated and very, very burdensome. So when we as a technology provider look at how we help organizations to overcome this challenge, we see the main problem being one of data. How do you collect data at scale? Globally, it comes in different formats, in different structures. How do you share it across very complex and often not too trusting networks? How do you protect it? How do you ensure that commercially sensitive information is within your control? And finally, and above all, how do you trust that data? And so the role of people in organizations who are having to ensure the data quality here, your compliance officers, your procurement directors, your sustainability managers, these roles are becoming ever more challenging and ever more critical to organizations. Now, alongside the struggles and amidst a lot of the noise that we're hearing about how difficult the regulation is to understand, never mind to follow and comply with it, we do see organizations who are taking really positive steps forward to prove that they're not sourcing from deforested land. They're embracing traceability solutions such as ours at Interu, and they're seeing them as a way to grow market share, support their suppliers, and find business efficiencies. To meet the regulations, to meet this data challenge head on, we think business as usual simply isn't going to cut it. And business as usual here is managing your supply chains through Excel spreadsheets, emails, text messages, shared drives. They are just not fit for purpose for the scale of the challenge that people are facing into. And so going back to the companies that are starting to adopt these technologies, we hear from them that they're achieving some brilliant and some unexpected results beyond the peace of mind that being able to prove that they're compliant brings. We're seeing them tell us that they use technology as a way to elevate their access to different markets, access to innovation, that it saves them weeks, if not months of time tracking down missing or incomplete or incorrect documentation from elsewhere in the supply chain, freeing up that's a really hard job that they're being freed up from. We're also being told that the quality of data has vastly increased through accountability for it that's better. And they're using technology to save the costs of training of their suppliers and their employees. In fact, a few months ago, we launched a survey of the European timber industry that found that over 300 organizations felt that this regulation, like the EU deforestation regulation, will actually result in positive things for their organization. So over 2/3 of them felt that the regulation would help them grow in terms of revenue or customers or profitability or in terms of market share. They still have a lot of questions about it, but they do see this as a positive thing overall. If anyone wants to find out more about the regulation, how we're supporting users to comply with it, the QR code on the right, if you scan that, it takes you to an up-to-date guide from July of this year as to the regulation. So if we think about this a little bit more, how are we turning some of these challenges into strengths? So our view as a technology provider here is that we need to bring together different methodologies, different tools to be able to do this. So Interu, we see ourselves as a trust platform here, bringing together through this platform approach best of breed advanced technologies such as Earth observation, remote sensing, satellite imagery analysis provided by experts in that field. It could be DNA or genetic testing of products. And so on and so forth. So we see ourselves as a real traceability pathfinder for organizations large and small, whether they are your big European retailers or whether you're a family-owned sawmill or cooperative in a producer nation. And we view it as being critical that technologies, methodologies collaborate, they join up to serve the industry with a digital data platform at its core, which allows users to collect the critical information, to analyze it, to verify it with third parties, and to securely store and share information in a way which reassures not just the regulators, but their shareholders and their consumers that they are in no way trading products that have any links to deforestation. So to wrap up, at IOV and Interu, we think there are 4 critical elements that are required to make traceability commonplace. First is collaboration across ecosystems, and especially between downstream participants and their suppliers, who need to be actively engaged with and actively supported. We think about this in terms of creation of open standards to facilitate secure and trusted data sharing. Included in the collaboration point is the need for technologies to integrate and work with each other rather than against each other. Rather than trying to be all things to all people, it's clear that the scale and the scope of traceability that regulation requires cannot be solved by one approach, one technology alone, and it definitely cannot be solved by business as usual approaches. And this is where technologies integration really become our friend. Critical to that success is having trust in the authenticity and in the integrity of data. So again, collaboration from reputable third parties, certification bodies, verifiers, earth observers, etc., who can endorse claims made about products. And then last but certainly not least is this idea that to make traceability commonplace, we believe there needs to be equitable distribution and access to the tools and methodologies and incentives to achieve it. By this, we're really clear. We mean it's no longer squeezing the upstream participants who for years have existed on the finest of margins, but rather equipping, engaging them, helping them to valorize the information that their downstream stakeholders require, that they're being forced to share to maintain global trading relationships. So thanks for listening. If you're interested, please do check us out. We always love having conversations with people who are a potential collaborator with us, who are really challenged by traceability or who require systems to help make their jobs easier and their products more trustworthy.